And good morning, and I'm just delighted that as many of you were willing to come to discuss this painful topic. I have been working with NGOs internationally for now almost 15, 20 years. And I developed this methodology for really three reasons. Number one, I had seen in too many places where really good and really important NGOs had been dependent on international donors, and then the international donors went away. And these very important organizations like yours became vulnerable because they did not have other sources of sustainability. The second reason was that I was not convinced that a lot of the traditional methods of fundraising and sustainability that we've used in the U.S. were going to work in other parts of the world. And I thought we needed to look at every possible source of sustainability. The third reason that I developed this methodology was very personal. I really don't know what was said in the introduction, so I will tell you a little bit about myself, just as background. For 20 years, I was the CEO of an NGO in a relatively small community in North Carolina in the United States. And the one thing that caused me the most stress, the one thing that kept me up worrying at night, was where was the next dollar of operating funds going to come from. And the day that my organization reached sustainability was the day that I was personally liberated. So who in this room is the CEO? Yep. Who of you has worried in the middle of the night, where is this next bit of money going to come from? Yes? Yes? Okay, so here's your motivation, all right? I prefer to use this methodology one-on-one with organizations, and I'm sure that they said in the introduction that we've done that with a few here, all right? You all are not going to get the one-on-one. You are not going to get Shannon holding your hand, right? But if you will take these tools and use them after tomorrow with your organization, you too will be able to be liberated. Okay? So that's your motivation. Let's see, what else? They have put me on a leash like a pet today. I'm not used to this. So if I fall over the cord, someone will have to pick me up. And I will I normally move around a lot. I'm going to try to still move around a lot, but I can't quite move as freely as I normally do. So, with that, let's get underway. By the way, you will all get this presentation, but you will get it electronically afterwards. You have all the other materials you need. Oh, great. I have this thing that keeps showing up. Do you all have this on your computers, right? It's an ad for malware or, for spyware. I don't know what to do about it. I can't seem to make it go away. So just you ignore, I'll ignore it, you ignore it. Okay, you already have, our agenda for the next couple of days, but let me just kind of give you the overview. Okay? The first thing we're going to talk about this morning is what it means to be overall sustainable as an organization. We're going to hit that pretty lightly, except for one piece, which is strategic planning. Now, normally I don't even do strategic planning as part of this workshop, but some of you all do not have strategic plans at this point, and for you all we're going to add two things. We're going to add information, and we're going to make you do an exercise. Okay. Then, this afternoon, we are going to start what is the heart of this workshop, because really what we're talking about is financial sustainability. It's great to have great programs. It's great to have great PR. It's great to have all of those things. But unless you have the money, all of those things are useless, right? Because they're going to end because you don't have the money. So and this is a very practical workshop, okay? We are going to talk about money almost all the next 2 days. And we're going to start with, today, talking about your expenses. What are you spending? And what will you need to spend in the future to be a strong and sustainable and professional level organization? So that's what we're going to cover today. Then tomorrow, yes, and by the end of today, you will be very depressed. You will be very depressed because what we're going to look at the end of today is how much money you need. And it's going to be more than you thought. And you who are CEOs will not sleep well tonight. So I'm just telling you. But then tomorrow, what we will come back and do and spend the whole day, the whole session tomorrow, talking about where does that money then come from. And I'm actually, from time to time, I'm going to call on Tanya and Andrea because they've been through this process, and I'm going to call on them occasionally to comment on what I'm saying. And so I'm going to do that now, Tanya. I'm going to ask you, at the end of the first day, when we got together with your team, were you depressed? Yes. And what did that big number look like?
Especially that we were even more ambitious than the workshop demanded. We wanted to plan 10 years in advance. The first idea was to plan 5 years in advance. And we said, okay, we are good, we are already sustainable, we want to plan 10 years in advance. And then when we planned it for 10 years in advance, it was shocking. Then we were frightened after the workshops, but the first workshop. But after that, the second one really helped to think through and to see how we really reach there.
Okay. And then, so tomorrow we will spend time figuring out, and each of you will do it individually with your teams, where the money comes from. And it's important, I think, that we'll talk about two broad categories of where the money will come from. One is, and we'll go over all of this in more detail, but one is what I call traditional gifts and grants. And basically, that's where somebody says, you're a good organization, here's some money. Right? And then the whole second realm of options is going to be earned income. And those, or self-financing is another term for it. But that's where you generate your own sources of revenues from people who are not donors, they are clients. And they will get something back from you in return, but you will get money for what you have done for them, basically. So we're going to look at those two broad categories in detail tomorrow. And then each one of you, having looked at all of that, will develop your own plan. And you'll have all the tools. By the end of the day tomorrow, you will have all the tools to do this on your own, and you will have gotten a reasonable head start in doing that, because we're going to start doing some of that, some very basic stuff during the next 2 days. Okay. This is just all your handouts. You don't need to know that. You've got them in your packet. Let's talk about what it means to be a sustainable organization. This is Shenon's definition, that being a sustainable organization is a combination of operational, programmatic, and financial characteristics that allow you to accomplish your mission on an ongoing and stable basis. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? Sometimes I'm never sure whether the words will translate well. So what we're saying here is sustainability as an organization, although the money is important, the money is not the only thing. Although the money is 95% of what we're going to talk about here, it's not the only thing, right? Because unless you are providing a valuable service that is valued by your community, you can have all the money in the world and it's meaningless, okay? So even though we're mostly going to talk about money, I want to acknowledge that there are other pieces of the program that are equally, if not more, important. Another way of looking at it is that you kind of have a series of concentric circles, and that organizational sustainability is the biggest circle. Financial sustainability, what we're going to be talking about mostly the next 2 days, is is a part of organizational sustainability. And then earned income, that bucket where you are earning your own revenues, is a part of financial sustainability. So that's a way to picture the pieces that we're going to be talking about. Organizational sustainability is like a puzzle piece, right? It is, you have to make all the pieces work together in order to have a strong, professional, ongoing organization. And this is simply a way of saying the same thing. So what are those elements? What are those elements of overall sustainability? A clear and shared mission. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. A clear strategic plan. We're going to talk about more of that in a minute. So I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail. Strong governance, meaning who is your board? Do you have people who govern the organization, who are thoughtful, who have the interests of the organization at heart? Do you have a way that it's not just the same people year after year after year, because we all need both continuity and new ideas. Do you have that balanced? Do you have a strong professional staff? Everybody in this room, everybody in this room is professional staff of the organization, or do we have some members of boards who are not paid? If you are a member of the board of your organization who is not paid, raise your hand. Oh, good, great. You are my heroes, and you are the most important people in the room. Sorry, everybody else. You are the most important people in the room, because it is your judgment and your liaison. This is not your day job, right? You have other things that you do, right? And because it is not your day job, it means you are interacting out there with the world, interfacing with the world in a way that the professional staff is not. And that gives you an incredibly important role within the organization, because you bring a different perspective. What are your desired ultimate outcomes and intermediate outcomes? Meaning, what changes in the world are you trying to produce? Right? Doesn't have to be fancy language. What activities are you planning to undertake? That's usually the easiest part for everybody to do. But the numbers 1 and 2, or A and B here, are more important. And what you need to do is to, after you've looked at number C, ask yourself, does it follow logically from A and B? Because sometimes it doesn't. Tanya.
I think that at least speaking from our own experience,
can you maybe stand too, because I'm not sure what the...
It's related to C question. I think at least it was my experience, my personal experience, and what I saw in the organizations, that here we usually enter into a trap to describe our current activities or previous activities. So when we are describing the activities, or I rather call it programs, we have a tendency to describe whatever we are doing now, a bit upgraded or decreased or whatever, but not going back to the mission and the change that we want to see, and then to think about the programs. No matter if we should maybe cut some programs, start something from the beginning, or completely change some programs, or introduce the new ones, but at least this was mine.
And thank you for that. And it's this, similar to what I was going to say, which is you have to then look at your programs and say, are they consistent with what we're trying to do in the world? And number D makes you do that. It says, why do we think these programs or activities are going to accomplish those things that we're trying to do through our mission? Another really good thing that this exercise does is it makes you be honest about the places where you are chasing dollars that are not necessarily part of your core mission. Right? Do you know, right? Now, that doesn't mean you will never do that. Okay, let's be realistic. Let's be realistic. Sometimes we have to chase the dollars. What I hope is by the end of the day tomorrow, you'll have the tools for doing less of that. Because if you've got a strong mission, a strong sense of who you are and what you are doing, and you stick to that, that's the beginning of a strong financial sustainability plan. That's the beginning of your financial sustainability. What will happen, I swear, is that those donors that you are chasing, by saying that today we are an organization working with children and youth, but a new grant proposal comes out and it says there's going to be all this money for working with the elderly, and all of a sudden you've added this program for the elderly because you want to chase those dollars. It might work once, but it's not going to work the second time and the third time. And people out in the community will start to say, you know, I thought that organization worked with children and they were doing a really good job, and now they've got this program for the elderly and it doesn't make any sense, right? So that's why when you're looking, as Tanya said, when you're looking at C, look at what you need to be doing in the future and look at how it relates to your mission. How will you measure where you're going? By the way, this worksheet is adapted from a U.S. foundation, the Hewlett Foundation, that for many, many years has been the organization that has been trying to help nonprofits in the United States and elsewhere in the world be consistent with their mission, their programs, and their evaluation. So all this mumbo-jumbo that we hear about evaluation, that is also not rocket science, right? It's like if we say we want to get to these places in the world, then how will we know whether we're getting there? Somebody else in the room, somebody else share with me share something of your mission, and Tanya can translate for me, because I don't want to keep picking on the Women's Center all the time, just because I've heard their mission. Who else will share? Okay.
Okay, I will speak in English, okay? The National Coalition for Decentralization is a coalition of CSOs and citizens creating enabling environment for increased participation of citizens in decision-making processes.
Great. Citizen participation. I'll call you citizen participation, I'll call you Women's Center. All right? Just because it's easier for me. Okay. One of the obvious measures for you is around instances and incidences of violence against women. So if there are fewer, let me put this in the opposite. First thing we think is, if there are more instances of violence against women, our first reaction might be that the organization is not accomplishing its mission. On closer examination, and this is why evaluation is an iterative process. You evaluate and then you think through what you're seeing and you say, okay, do we need to change our programs? Do we need to be doing something different? What might be happening is that because the organization is calling attention to violence against women, more cases are being reported. So what we might find out is that our first indicator is not fully capturing what we thought we needed to capture. Is that true? And so then you need to be looking at, okay, or it could be the opposite. Oh, I'm going to kill myself on this cord. I may be creating my own violence against myself with this. What the opposite, if cases decrease, it could be that violence against women is going more underground and needs to be exposed more. So I'm just pointing this out as the subtleties that can happen as you evaluate, and the fact that you need to choose some measures and then you need to kind of evaluate your evaluation along the road. Yours might be voter participation. It might be participation in citizens' organizations. It might be voluntarism. Do you have now some indicators that you're using? Ways that you're looking at whether you're accomplishing your mission.
A number of engaged citizens,
Number of
volunteers engaged into our actions, a number of CSOs engaged into our actions.
So you guys are already thinking about that, and from time to time, you not only need to look at your numbers, but actually look at the question of, are we measuring the right thing? I think it was Einstein who said it is easy to measure, but hard to know what to measure. I'm paraphrasing that. I didn't get it exactly right, but that's the hardest piece. And then the very last piece here is G, which is how do you plan to sustain your operations? And guess what? When we go to filling this out, you don't have to fill out that one, because that's what we're going to spend the next 2 days doing. So I am looking at my watch, and shockingly, we seem to be a little bit ahead of time, which is great, because we'll inevitably lose time. What I want to do, I assume the break is ready, is this. The organizations that already have a strategic plan can take a coffee break, a smoke break, whatever. And we're going to come back in 45 minutes. So we're going to come back at 1:50. All right, 10 minutes to the organizations, 10 minutes to 2. The organizations that do not have a strategic plan will have 5 minutes to take a coffee break and grab your snacks and bring them back to the room and sit down with your teams from your organization and write an essay on each one of these topics, A through F. No. No. I want you to jot down 2 or 3 bullets on each of these things, A through F. And actually, I've just decided to be mean. I've just decided to be mean. I'm going to let the organizations that already have strategic plans take a half an hour. And then I want you to come back with your teams and jot down bullets from your strategic plans. Did you guys bring, if you had them, you brought your strategic plans with you, right? Because I want you to be part of our conversation afterwards as well. So if you have a strategic plan, you get to take half an hour between now and 35 minutes after the hour. And then come back and just jot down bullets from your plan you already have with you. Those of you who don't have, take 5 minutes, come back, and Tanya and Andrea and I will be wandering around to help you with your teams. Is that clear? Clear? Okay, thanks. I'm going to